But at the same time, speak to, our role specifically, we need to have some hubris and understand that we're not getting a hyper Bitcoinization without the finance industry. Like, we need these tools, products, and strategies to get dollars into Bitcoin. I was extremely encouraged to see a lot of the folks at the conference that are interested in doing that. Do they wear a sport coat? Yes. Do they respect themselves? Yes. Do they take their work seriously? Yes. And that's something we should not be scared of.
Bitcoin is a currency on the internet.
If you don't trust any other currency, this is where you go.
It's going to outperform everything.
Bitcoin could eventually be worthless.
Every day is a good day to buy Bitcoin.
Bitcoin reached its highest price to date.
Bitcoin hitting a new high. It really has reached escape velocity.
There is no second best.
Who cares about Bitcoin?
It's the only secure database that's ever been invented.
Antisocial.
Bitcoin is the real deal.
Stupid.
Everything is bullish for Bitcoin.
Immoral.
It's going up forever, Laura.
Fix the money, fix the world.
Wyatt is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed on the show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of the Silica LLC. Joining us as a CPA, and the opinions expressed on the show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Trusted CPA or other affiliated firms. Information presented is for educational purposes only. It does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives. Is not intended as a recommendation appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Bitcoin for Financial Services podcast. I'm joined today by my co-host Wyatt O'Rourke, and man, we were supposed to have Sailor on, and he stood us up. I don't know what's going on with Mr. Sailor, but talked to him in Vegas, and I guess he got busy, so we'll have to have him back on time that works better for him.
Yeah, it's a shame. His PJ must have got grounded or something. Couldn't get back to the recording studio.
He texted me that he got delayed a little bit, so because the fuel cost for the PJ is a little bit higher, and there's some mishaps, and he's pissed. So, but we'll have him back on. So, but today we just the two of us, and of course we're not joking about Sailor. They're totally serious. So what? Wyatt, today is Friday, May 1st. Happy May. The year's flying by. We just touched down in our own airplanes that we paid for, paid tickets to fly on. I don't know, you got back yesterday. I think I also got back yesterday. So how are you feeling? 3-4 days in Vegas. Feeling good?
Wouldn't be the first word I would describe. Yeah, I'm feeling great. I'm really, really tired, but it was a phenomenal conference. You know what? I tweeted about this before. It's fun to do a solo episode. I'm happy we're doing this. We haven't done a solo episode since our first one, and it'll be good just for us to go back and forth. But we really kind of want to focus on the conference, our experience. There's a lot of fun on Twitter, but I guess a kind of preference. I tweeted about this before, but I like conferences. People always crap on conferences, and I don't know, maybe they're doing conferences poorly and I excel at them, but I always feel like I walk away with, great takeaways. This conference specifically, I actually don't sit on too many of the talks. If a friend is talking, I generally try to attend to support them, but all the talks are recorded, and there's I think there were 20,000 people there this year, and so it's just such a great opportunity to meet people that I've known for a while but have only talked to online. It was the case for me and a couple clients. We got to meet in person for the first time, which was awesome. Do some networking, some business development. It's a great opportunity to talk to partners and touch base. Different other professional service providers we utilize or have relationships with. It's always good to show face. And then I think specifically the Bitcoin conference itself is the best opportunity to just see as many people in the industry as possible in one place. So people I don't do business with or maybe never will, but we're still friends or just work in different parts of the industry, it's always great to say, hey, check in on them, how they're doing. And that's where I think you really learn the most of what's really going on in the industry, and best way to kind of keep tabs on it.
Yeah. I mean, the in real life stuff is just so important. And this year I know we spoke about it a little bit at some point. I don't know if it was on a stage or just over dinner, but there was so much FUD this year about the conference in general. I genuinely just don't understand that. I mean, you kind of gotta play the hand you're dealt as a Bitcoiner, and not everything is going to be perfect, and so you might have your complaints with Mr. Bailey, but I was very just happy about the conference and thought it went really well. And to your point, got to meet a lot of people, got to see a lot of people that we already work with. And I know that I thought you might rub it in right there, but we were keeping tabs on how many opportunities each of us got up on stage. I'm going to have to talk to Brandon and David because they got you up on stage twice as many times as I was up on stage. So we'll work on that. But give everyone real quick the rundown. What were you talking about up on stage? And also go ahead and talk through the event that we put on in the Venetian as an official side event on Tuesday.
Dude, you just keep working hard, keep grinding. You'll get on stage more. Don't worry.
I just need to work more. My wife's gonna love to hear that.
Your wealth deserves intention. Basilic Financial is a Bitcoin-focused wealth management firm built to help our clients find balance between money and meaning. We integrate sound money strategies across 4 distinct personalized services: financial planning, individual wealth management, retirement services for SMBs, and Bitcoin financial services. Your prosperity, your purpose, intentionally guided at Basilic Financial. Visit our website at basilic.io to schedule a free consultation.
Yeah, well, I even told her that. It's like, Jordan's not working hard enough. Well, let him be. I was on 2 panels, very fortunate and excited to be. One was on Bitcoin-backed lending and scaling operations. So this is very pertinent to the work I'm doing over at PAX with the credit fund. Know those guys. I was on panel with very well, familiar with their business models, and I think the biggest takeaway there, debt markets are just kind of core infrastructure of financial markets. They price risk, they move capital, they scale economic activity, and we're really kind of starting to see the phase 1 of that being pretty well solidified in the Bitcoin ecosystem, which is great. Salt, for example, is on Hunter, their chief revenue officer, was on the panel. They've been around since 2016, we've been operating for 10 years. This isn't exactly like a new thing. And so it was just really exciting understanding we've gotten to the point where that industry is pretty well established. And now we were having conversations about how that industry grows and how we deepen Bitcoin capital markets. Like Salt specifically, they have some really neat insurance products you can purchase on top of your loans to prevent liquidations, and those are kind of like pseudo insurance products, and you can price those, and then we can better assess the risk of Bitcoin with additional information and products like that, which is cool. Arch Lending was also on the panel. They have moved pretty heavily into the kind of institutional borrower space, and they've developed collar loans specifically for their products. So you're actually buying derivative products to hedge against any price movements of Bitcoin up or down. So that was pretty neat to see and talk about. And then the other panel was on inheritance and wealth building within Bitcoin. That's obviously what I do with Basilic on a day-to-day basis. We had Jeff Van Drew and Zach Townsend and Jake Calvar. They're all work in the industry. Jeff's at Unchained, Zach's at Meanwhile, and Jake's at Digital Family Office Group, and just really great folks. Jeff does a lot of work on the Gannett Trust side of things, so he was taking it down the importance of different legal structures and how it can help protect your stack, how it can really be beneficial to, your heirs, or, whatever charity or cause that is close to your heart. And yeah, I think he's so level-headed and, former lawyer, so he's pretty straight to the point, but I think it's a good message for Bitcoiners to hear in general, because they can get kind of antagonistic towards different legal structures. I'm certainly sympathetic to that and understanding where Bitcoiners are coming from there, but I think Matt McClintock, our mutual friend, does a great job explaining. It's like, look, these are the cards we've been dealt. If we operate within this legal system, let's use it to the best of our capabilities, use it to our advantage. And Jeff is of a similar mind to that. So that was just really good insight for the audience. And then Zach, meanwhile, we had Danny Barrett, their head of asset management, and audience is already very familiar with that product. I personally love that product and applaud them for what they've done within the Bitcoin financial services industry. Fully denominated. Their whole company is fully denominated in Bitcoin. Their investment products are denominated in Bitcoin. That instrument itself has some really cool attributes when it comes to inheritance and earning true Bitcoin denominated yield. So it's always fun to talk with Zach. And then Jake's done a lot of work with high net worth individuals, specifically in the digital asset space. So he's seen a lot of what those folks need, what they want, how they can better serve them. And so 2 great panels. And then lastly, save the best for last, of course, the star of the show, star of the conference, I heard people say, was the de minimis tax event that we hosted for Bitcoin for Financial Services Media. We've been doing a lot more side events, which is great. One of the things we tried to be very intentional about at the start of the year was, while we love our summit, and the summit's like the main thing, we want to give our community, our partners, like more exposure, more access, like throughout the year. And we held a side event in Austin at Bitcoin Takeover. We'll be having a few more side events coming up at the Midwest Bitcoin Summit, and then either Imagine If or Treasury and Custody Summit in Nashville, depending on how the dates for those work out. But our one at the Bitcoin conference here, this is by far, I think, the biggest side event we've hosted. Phenomenal partners. We're working with Bitcoin Inc., Bitcoin Policy Institute, Block, Bitcoin Well, Falcon Rappaport and Berkman, TFTC, and they really helped us throw amazing event. I think we had 75, 80 people in the room, and it was a very intimate setting. David Zell, President BPI, Janessa Lopez, head of policy at Block. They had pretty much an hour to lay out where we're sitting with de minimis tax legislation. These are people are in DC talking to actual legislators, and I was just really excited that there were a lot of great questions. That setting gave the people the opportunity to ask them good questions, and it's not like you're getting drowned out in a massive expo hall. And so really stoked with how that turned out, and just a huge shout out to and thank you to Marty and the TFTC team for streaming that as well, so folks that weren't in attendance could also participate and learn.
Yeah, and that stream is available as well. I know we're pushing out a Substack article on our side on Monday morning to all of our clients to make sure that they can catch that. But if you want to go back and watch that, the video stream, it's TFTC's. It's just on their YouTube channel and on their X feed. And my biggest takeaway from that event that I think even took David and Janessa back a little bit was when David asked the question, raise your hand if you've ever transacted in Bitcoin. And he kind of went down. He's like, all right, what about if you've done it in the last month or so? And a bunch of the hands still stayed up. And then even he asked the question, it was 10 a.m. in the morning, raise your hand if you've transacted in Bitcoin today. And there were still 6 or 7 hands that were up, which I was like, that's crazy. I mean, I don't know if they're just lying or if that's true, but that's cool. And then they also asked the question, raise your hand if you run a business that accepts Bitcoin as payment for your goods or services, and a ton of hands went up. And I just remember them being like, you can see it in the video, they're like, wow, we need to take this to the different legislators. And and show that real Americans are using Bitcoin either to pay for services or goods, or to receive goods or services, pay for those goods or services. And that was just a surprise for me. And then I think another big thing that, like the question I asked Janessa specifically, was about any ways we can try to continue down the path to make sure that Bitcoin is looked at as a, something like the internet or email, or like more of a public utility, where it's not, of course it's not viewed as a partisan type of topic, which is easier said than done. And we still have quite a bit of work to do on that front. And but I think that's going to be important, because they did bring a little bit of a sobering reality of, look, we've got to get through market structure, then we can get to crypto tax. The odds that we get there before the midterms are, that's a tough thing. And so that just means, well, you've got to make sure that it's a bipartisan bill, assuming that the Democrats take back the House, maybe even take back the Senate in November. So I was very excited, because obviously that's not the world we live in. We don't, we aren't in the swamp, really ever, right? But whether Bitcoiners like it or not, you do have to interact with the lizard people from time to time, and see if we can get some legislation passed that moves the ball forward. Because ultimately, people are not going like the mainstream, single mom or someone who runs a shop in Chicago, and they're not really a Bitcoiner, but they would love to see their credit card processing bill go down on an annual basis. They'd love to use Bitcoin, but if it's going to come with all this additional reporting and potentially put a target on their back from the tax standpoint, they're just going to be much less likely to use the technology versus, hey, you can stay in compliance. Your accountant doesn't have to, go read the Bitcoin standard. It just it just works, and it's easy, and so we really need that. That was and then my one panel that I was able to sit on was actually about 1099 DA reporting, and so kind of in a similar vein. If anyone's selling Bitcoin, what does that look like on the forms that went out this past tax season, and what's going to be different in 2027 for the 26 forms? Right now they're just reporting proceeds, no cost basis. It's a complete mess, to say it mildly. And so we discussed that up on the enterprise stage for about 30 minutes. And so all that to say, there's still a lot of work to be done. It was kind of funny. I walked away there. It didn't feel like there was as many plebs there this year, and there was actually a lot more folks that are running in our circles in the Bitcoin for financial services space. Like, I got stopped by several different advisors actually the day after, that either came to our de minimis event or sat in on my panel and just said, hey, I work at Charles Schwab, or I'm from Fidelity, or I'm from KPMG, and we've spun up a digital asset department, and we're here trying to learn and meet people and all that kind of stuff. Which, again, people might say, oh, Bitcoin's bending the knee, but at the end of the day, most Americans are making their financial decisions based off of those advisors, be it on Wyatt's side or on my side on the tax. And if you can't win the hearts and minds of those professionals, then it's going to be very tough to rely on people to swim upstream and really be adamant with their advisor. No, I am going to sell this bond portfolio allocation, and I am going to withdraw it to cash, and then I am going to push it through Bitcoin Well and hold my own keys. Even just getting to the point where the advisor says, yeah, we're going to allocate 2%, 5% to IBIT, that's just a step in the right direction. And then you have to hope that the education that folks like Wyatt and I and everyone else in this space are putting out are, allowing that Trojan horse to kind of do its thing. And they're like, oh, wow, so what is this Bitcoin thing? Let me go watch some videos. Oh, I see. So me holding IBIT, it's not real Bitcoin. It's synthetic. I need to get my hands on real Bitcoin. How do I do that? And so I was really bullish. I think I'm hopeful that the overall Bitcoin community can in some ways mature a little bit and kind of just be a little bit more pragmatic, that the whole world of like, oh, we're going to, shut down the Fed and everyone's going to be doing peer-to-peer money and there's not going to be any synthetics, any derivatives built on top of Bitcoin. We're going to tear down all these financial institutions. I just think that's kind of pie in the sky, and you should just be a bit more realistic to say we want more families that are able to use this technology. So like, what is the most realistic path to get there?
Totally. Well, and I think it's a great point. I'm happy you brought it up, because that is something that has, irked me for a while, and, I say it a lot, but it's worth repeating. I think as Bitcoiners, something we talk a lot about too is, building whatever you're doing within the principles, values, and ethos of Bitcoin. We open and close every show with it. And that is really meant to pay homage to the cypherpunks and people that came before us in Bitcoin. Like, we definitely don't want to be dismissive of everything they've done for us, but at the same time, speak to, our role specifically, we need to have some hubris and understand that we're not getting a hyper Bitcoinization without the finance industry. Like, we need these tools, products, and strategies to get dollars into Bitcoin. I was extremely encouraged to see a lot of the folks at the conference that are interested in doing that. Do they wear a sport coat? Yes. Do they respect themselves? Yes. Do they take their work seriously? Yes. And that's something we should not be scared of, as
you should talk about that, because we've talked about that. Anytime I've showed up to an airport to fly to Denver and I'm wearing sweatpants, you always scold me. So maybe talk through maybe speak to the plebs, speak to maybe just the broad community about what is the we're dressed down a little bit today, but we were dressed up most of the time at the conference. What is that? What does it mean to you, Wyatt, to how you present yourself anywhere?
Well, totally. No, it means a lot, and some of this has to do with Bitcoin, some of it doesn't. But I have two gripes with the Bitcoin industry. It's one, they make Bitcoin an idol, and then two, they dress awfully, and both can easily be addressed. Bitcoin idol is pick up the Bible and go to church. That will answer that much better than I can. Dressing awfully, I talked about this in one of my interviews, where Bitcoin is a noble cause. It's a noble endeavor. It was a noble project. I have the utmost respect for, Satoshi, whoever he is. It's wow, what an outstanding guy. And obviously don't know him personally, but you can tell he was a noble person just given the design of Bitcoin. The game theories and the incentives are brilliant. And if we are really a good steward of a noble invention, we should act nobly. And this is something where I think Bitcoiners really miss a lot of the times. How you present yourself is important, and it's are you living up to that standard? Are you representing yourself and your family in a conscious way? Do I elevate the people around me with my actions and my intentions? And how you dress is one of the easiest and simplest ways to do that. And that doesn't mean if you're wearing a hoodie, you should be looked down upon, but by elevating your dress, you're adding more professionalism. You're signaling to people this is something I care about. I care about myself. I take myself seriously, and it's Bitcoin should be taken extremely seriously. And so there's a lot of different rabbit holes I could go down with that, but I think that's the big takeaway is let's have some respect for not only ourselves but Bitcoin itself and the work we're doing. And if we do that, it will be translated into all of our work and on all of the causes we care about.
So just to be clear, are you specifically calling out people who did not wear a tie to the black tie gala?
What do you want to get at here? You want to throw me under the bus, or?
No,
I didn't wear a tie. Okay.
Okay. I couldn't remember who was wearing a tie, who wasn't, but I just I did want to set you up for that, and on that, so.
It was the first time Jordan's ever stunted on me with the dress, and he looked really sharp.
Did I look well? Did I wear the tuxedo well?
Oh, without a doubt. I saw you, and I just got like immediately envious, and I was like, I hate it when this happens.
This episode is brought to you by Satoshi Pacioli, a full-service accounting and tax firm built for the Bitcoin economy. If you run a Bitcoin business, mine Bitcoin, or invest in it, you need advisors who actually understand how this industry works. Satoshi Pacioli handles bookkeeping, financial reporting, tax compliance, and strategic planning for Bitcoin-focused companies and individuals. They speak the language of Bitcoiners and help you stay compliant while building for the long term. To learn more or book a consultation, visit satoshipacioli.com. Well, at least it's never happened before. Probably will never happen again. So, yeah. So, okay, let's talk through what we see.
Well, I have a question for you. Can I ask you a question?
Tell me.
What was it like having a booth and working the expo hall?
The booth was busy. I really enjoyed Monday. Monday was you kind of had to have the pro pass to make it into the expo hall. So got to see a lot of just partners, a lot of familiar faces. You open it up to the general admission, and it's just there were a lot more people there on Tuesday, Wednesday. But you just you never really know what you're going to get when folks are walking up. And so it was definitely really good to make sure we had our name out there. For you and I specifically, it was great to be able to push de minimis by having the flyers at our booth, having the flyers at the Square booth, and then also, I don't think we know if we've ever even really talked about it publicly, but we have been in the background building out the Bitcoiner Family Office initiative, and so we got to speak to people about that, and man, there was a ton of interest in that service offering, just because people want to work with professionals who understand Bitcoin at from a technical level to a degree, right? Of course, we don't know the ins and outs of ZK rollups and all the code-based stuff, but understand Bitcoin at a core level of, okay, you've listened to 1,000 hours at least of Bitcoin podcast, you're well versed in all the different pieces. But they also want to work with someone who has, just that baseline. Okay, we think about the world the same, right? Mm-hmm. For the most part, of course, Bitcoin does have a ton of diversity, and it's not everyone is just thinking the exact same way, which is one of the most beautiful things about Bitcoin. And if you go on Twitter, you see a lot of infighting, just because people have very strong views. But when you meet a Bitcoiner from any country, right? Maybe they speak your language, maybe they don't, but at the core that they believe in Austrian economics. They probably have a bent towards strong personal responsibility. They hold themselves and their families to a very high standard. And a lot of that is, if you just go out into the world, that's lost on a lot of people, sadly. And so, yeah, we got a lot of folks who came up and said, my CPA doesn't understand Bitcoin, scoffs at it, things that you and I hear all the time. I want to, at least have a call and see if it might make sense for us to work together on the tax side. And then you start talking a little bit more, and they're like, yes, I want to allocate more of my portfolio into Bitcoin, or more of my income into Bitcoin. Maybe I do that through mining, through Abundant Mines. Maybe I go and talk with Riley or Chantel over Bitcoin Well. Or I want to build a trust, or I want to have my financial planner actually understand this asset, help me set up the custody, things like what you do, Wyatt. And so got a lot of just good feedback on the family office specifically. And I know one of the main reasons we've spun that up, you already mentioned Mr. McClintock. Matt only works with folks who are 50 million net worth or more. And so we think that there's quite a gap from the, call it $5 million net worth all the way up to the $50 million net worth, where their professionals are not speaking to each other as often as the client would like. And there's just these different silos. Maybe one's a Bitcoiner, the other several are not Bitcoiners. And so we're just trying to create the easy button where you can have all of your things, whether it's estate planning, financial planning, tax planning, all of it done by practitioners who believe in Bitcoin and all that are all well connected It's not a referral network. It is, hey, you speak to Wyatt, you sign a data sharing agreement. Okay, now the information you shared with Wyatt, you don't have to tell the other two practitioners, call it the tax and the attorney side, the same story, right? They go into all the different calls, being able to know, okay, they last spoke about wanting to set up a solo 401k for their small business. All right, let's talk through what that would look like if we put X amount of dollars, or if we maxed it out, what would that do on the tax side for, this given tax year? And so, yeah, the conference, there was a lot of good interest in that. We've already seen some interest even before the conference in the family office setup. And so I was very bullish. Of course, on the Bitman side, one of the things that I spoke about on stage is the cost basis schedules. It's one of those, it's kind of a bit of a dark horse because nobody wants to think about it. They're like, it's so confusing. I've been in Bitcoin since 2017 and my stuff is so scattered. I don't even know if I could find all the data that I would need to build a full cost basis schedule. But there is just this pure forcing mechanism now of these 1099 DA forms are going out, and that means that there's not a question of whether or not you like should report it, will report it. It's like it is reported. It's reported to the government by the exchange that you transacted on. And so now you're going to have a cost basis associated with that. Either the exchange can provide that, you can provide that. And so we're having to, help clients make sure that they're set up well to have that in place, whether they need to sell Bitcoin to cover operating expenses for their business, they want to donate it to, something that Wyatt might set up for you, or they want to take a loan against it down the road. They want to gift it to their church. They want to gift it, pass it on to their heirs. You need to know cost basis in order to correctly report all those transactions, and also know, all right, I'm selling this because I bought it last year and the cost basis is pretty close to the proceeds maybe. All right, so very small gain versus, all right, I'm going to donate these lots because if I sold that, it would be a huge tax hit and I don't want to do that. So yeah, we got some good interest on the cost basis tax reporting stuff as well. Bitcoin mining is still a very hot topic, especially for folks who are earning, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year on a W-2 or more, and looking to allocate to Bitcoin, but also get some tax offsets. All right, I'm gonna throw it back to you now. So last year, I feel like it was stable coins, right? There were all these memes, right, of all these people just saying the word stable coins over and over again. This year, I feel like
I forgot about that.
If you're a financial professional working with Bitcoin, you know the pain of messy CSVs, broken cost basis, and accounting tools that were never built for this asset. Bitmint fixes that. Bitmint is the Bitcoin native accounting platform built for CPAs, bookkeepers, advisors, miners, and serious Bitcoin investors. You get clean Bitcoin bank statements, reliable cost basis tracking, full reporting, and fiat integration through Plaid. No crypto talk, no workarounds, just proper accounting for the hardest money on earth. Create a free account or book a demo at bitmint.co today. Right? I feel like the whole thing this year was 11.5%, yield on stretch. Give us since Saylor didn't end up showing up, give us your unfettered view on stretch, and what are the pros, what are the cons of that product, what are the real risks of someone allocating a big portion of their portfolio. Since, he was up there, he was preaching the gospel, I was in the whale room once he came over and did a Q&A. I think a lot of people are scared to ask Saylor some hard questions sometimes, because remember we were both in New York and someone asked him a question, they did a little Q&A with him, and he ripped that guy to shreds. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I do vividly.
It's a scary thing to stand up and ask Mr. Saylor a question, and especially one that might be a little bit, I don't know what the word is, like, hey, I'm trying to call you out on this specific risk, but I'm curious to get your thoughts, because I know you have strong thoughts about stretch, and since it was such a big topic this year, we should probably discuss it a little bit.
Yeah, certainly, and before I do your point about the family office group, we were really excited to kind of soft launch that at the conference. That's something we've been putting quite a bit of work in over the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months, like whatever it's been here. I think to your point, what we're really trying to do is like eliminate this pit in client's stomach, just hoping and praying that specifically when it comes to Bitcoin, that my financial plan works with my tax planning strategies, my estate plan, and we want to remove that. And to Jordan's point, all Bitcoin native, all communicate with each other. I'm really stoked with the partners we have on board with that. I'm handling the financial planning, wealth management. You're handling the tax side of things. Falcon, Rappaport, and Berkman handling the estate planning, asset protection, legal side of things. Bitcoin Well and their infinite program specifically for OTC purchases of very large amounts, which is the clientele we're catering to, and then Abundant Minds on the hosted mining side to take advantage of some of the tax benefits that strategy allows. And so I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be a great initiative in the broader market. But specifically to your point about Stretch, quite a bit of conversation on that. I'm not a fan of stablecoins. The stablecoin stuff kind of irked me a little bit last year because it's like, that's annoying. I'm obviously biased just being in finance. I think this stuff is cool and very exciting for the industry. People maybe disagree with me on that, but Stretch specifically, like if we break it down, and we had a great conversation with Jeff Walton the other day. He's at Strive. They have a similar product, but Sailor's game is essentially, can I continuously raise dollars to deploy that capital into Bitcoin and grow my balance sheet? And so he has like multiple different levers he can pull at any given time. And so Stretch is going gangbusters right now. I think they've done a few $100 billion since the start of the year. And so they're selling preferred equity. They get those dollars in, they buy more Bitcoin. What people get hung up on or have a concern is they obviously have a very high dividend rate. I think it started at 9 when they released it in like July or August of last year, and it's up to 11.5%. It's up to them to determine what the interest rate is going to be any given month. But the more shares they sell, they have a higher dividend liability, and they don't have technically they have a data analytics and AI software company that nobody's actually aware of. It generates very small amounts of revenue, so let's not even take that into consideration, that the operating business is able to pay the dividend liability. So it's like, well, how do you pay the dividend liability? Well, you have to raise capital a different way, and I think this is most commonly done through the common shares. And so they issue more common stock of MSTR specifically, and you as a common shareholder get diluted when that happens because there's more stocks in circulation. The way this actually works is you're likely to come out ahead on a Bitcoin per share basis because they took all the proceeds they raised from Stretch and bought Bitcoin with it. So people say it's like, well, that's a Ponzi scheme. You're paying off old investors with new investors' money. I don't think so, because they're ultimately purchasing Bitcoin. It's like they have $815,000, or excuse me, 815,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. It's not like they're not doing anything with the money. Like they're acquiring, an asset that they can utilize to benefit their shareholders, or deploying different strategies. And so that's really kind of high level how it works. It is still fairly new product. Even Pierre Rochard at our summit last year was like, these are experiments, like these are new and old instruments in the marketplace. Obviously Sailor didn't come up with a preferred stock, but deploying a preferred stock in this way I think is fairly novel. And so we'll see how this all plays out. Like anything, like do your homework, size your position correctly, understand the potential risks involved, and once you have those three things mainly, you're able to make an informed economic decision. So I think it's exciting. I think this is a good step in the Bitcoinization of finance.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very, I mean, it's a little over my head, but it's definitely very interesting. It was kind of there's like this breakdown, right, even in the conference between like more of the freedom tech folks, right, who are like, I'm here to, you know, push things like Nostr, push things like peer-to-peer stuff with Bitcoin. And then there's kind of like the MicroStrategy sect, right, that's like a very different type of attendee. And so, and obviously our brand really tries to cater actually to both of those simultaneously, because I think that there's really good value for either one. And you talk to most MSTR holders or stretch holders, they do have a chunk of Bitcoin that they hold in cold storage, self-custody, or with a collaborative custody model. And then they're trying to go out the risk curve a little bit, which, you know, to each their own, right? I feel like Bitcoin, I know it's not risky if we think about it in Bitcoin terms, but in dollar terms, it is quite volatile. And so it is, it's just one of those things that was kind of an interesting way to see the conference, and we'll see where it goes from here. I mean, I've got the strategy dashboard actually pulled up right here, and you know, their debt, I think, is still, yeah, I mean, their debt really has not moved in quite some time. Like, I'm showing their nominal debt is still at 8.2 billion, and their and the balance sheet is still showing, you know, like you said, where they've got the 800 something thousand Bitcoin at 78,000, and it's back, and MSTR is back over 1 MNAV. So let's say, I mean, it I think it all fits together in a balanced Bitcoin still heavily exposed portfolio, and we'll kind of see I think the thing on the tax side that I've always found interesting on Stretch is that they've structured the dividends to come back to you as return of capital, and so you're not having to pay dividend, or, you know, not having to pay taxes on that income, which is very interesting as well when you put it up against regular, I guess, other dividend type of products or other interest-bearing income products. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. All right, I know we're going to try to keep it fairly short today, and just kind of give a broad overview of what we learned at the conference, what we got to see. But any final thoughts to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think, you know, Jack Mallers announced 21 was buying Strike. I thought that was like the most obvious thing ever. But I think that's ultimately cool and good for the industry. They're doing, you know, great work, and we have another example of you know, I would say awesome, you know, Bitcoin financial services company going, you know, public, which is great. I think that's healthy for the ecosystem at large. I think that's healthy for, you know, public markets. So I think that's cool. Brandon, you know, Green talked about this the other day, but, you know, bear markets are for building. I think there were still, you know, 20,000 people there as opposed to like 30,000 last year. So it's like, okay, you know, 10,000 less, 20,000 people is still a crap load of people. You know, I never thought it's like, wow, this place is dead. I was like, holy smokes, there's a ton of people here. You're on your feet all day, constantly talking to folks, great conversations. So I was super stoked about that. I saw a post going viral today on X about, I don't know, this poor gal is just getting absolutely trolled, but I didn't actually see that many like token schemes or like shitcoins or anything like that. I didn't go talk to every booth, obviously. Were you seeing any of that? Like, I had zero conversations or like really insight into that.
Yeah, it was very small. I mean, we definitely got a few questions. Like KPMG guys, for example, were asking about if the software supported shitcoins. And so, you know, because a lot of the big financial services folks are still, you know, they're dealing with people who are, you know, still have a lot of the dollars that they were able to acquire by dumping whatever their token was on retail. And so then, and once you make a lot of money on a specific token, that is kind of what you hitch your wagon to, I feel like, at least with the experience I have with that community. on the tax side is like, you know, if you ran up with ETH or you were part of the pre-sale or something, like that's what made you wealthy, right? And so you just latch onto that, and then you end up, the professionals that are working with those folks, they end up, that's kind of their identity, right? It's like, well, I deal with people who hold Solana or Ethereum as well as Bitcoin, and so they see it as this broad digital asset. Definitely saw, as everyone saw, there was the big XRP thing on the Caesar Hotel. It's always so telling. Like, Bitcoin doesn't have that marketing budget because it is legitimately decentralized, and so anytime you see one of these tokens being, you know, pushed behind a huge marketing budget, if you're an intelligent person, you should stop and ask yourself, how is it decentralized if it has a marketing budget? You know, the conversation I had with my Uber driver on the way into the airport as we left the hotel was that Bitcoin is the only actually decentralized digital asset that's out there, not stable coins, not any of the other tickers that you might see on Coinbase. And so, yeah, I think it was definitely down, but purely because those folks have just run out of money, either on that token specifically, or they've dumped on retail and they've just exited the space altogether because they never truly believed in the technology. They just were looking for a way to make a quick buck, and then go do whatever else, they move to the next scheme kind of thing. So it was good to see mostly Bitcoin only, and I hope that trend continues. But as Bitcoin price rises, generally there's all these different things that kind of latch onto those coattails and deceive people. And like Wyatt and I say on just about all the episodes we do, that's one of the main reasons we exist, is to help all the different financial professionals actually understand what Bitcoin is and why it is so distinct from any other cryptocurrency and should not be lumped in with all the other, frankly, garbage that's out there.
Without a doubt. Beautifully said, Big J.
Yes, sir. Alrighty. Well, we will be back next week with another guest, but appreciate everyone joining, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you, folks. We appreciate you joining us. If you want to help build the future of Bitcoin and financial services, hit subscribe, leave a review, and most importantly, share this with someone in your network who's integrating Bitcoin into their practice. The more professionals we reach, the stronger the ecosystem becomes, and our clients are better served. Stay sharp, stay sovereign, keep leading from the front.